Well, very good. We're going to obviously hear from members. I think I'm going to start off tonight. And first of all, again, thank the city attorney for a strong presentation. Trying to reconstruct how this happened. It happened because the city of Sacramento for decades has operated in one way. And it turned out when this question was raised in the context of a potential recall election, that the answer was different. And so what do we do going forward? Well, what I hear, and I do want to hear from Paul Mitchell, so I'll turn it over to him for a second after my comment. What do we do going forward? We follow the law. And essentially what the law says, and it makes sense, is that you are represented by that. What it says is that you could only be represented by those people by the people that you elected, is really what it says. And I know it's a little different with the acceleration issue, but on the second piece of this, the end result of the law that I don't even think we can change by charter is that there will be areas in the even numbered districts that will not have a council representative until the 2024 elections. That doesn't mean that they won't be served, because the mayor is elected citywide. And when it comes to constituent services, I think it is appropriate for the mayor to be in the lead, because he or she, in this instance is he, is the only one who was elected to represent those constituents. But I would pledge to work with my colleagues to do what is absolutely best for the constituents in those 2 years. And if that means a combination of additional mayoral staff combined with additional council staff, whether it be the mayor, vice mayor, the mayor pro tem, or the council member who may seek to represent that new territory in the next election, that is something that I am confident that we can all work out together, because the most important thing is to ensure that while we must follow the law, that all of our constituents are confident that they will be representative day to day. And then in terms of making sure their voices are heard in the representative body and the decisions that we make every Tuesday afternoon and every Tuesday night. Mr. Mitchell, do you want to comment on any of this?
Yeah, I'm definitely happy to. And thanks for having me here. I did do a presentation, but rather than give the presentation, since I think your staff did a great job, I'd be happy to just make sure that your staff has access to it and your council members do. And if there's something I need to show on a slide, I could bring that up. But just to give the background for those council members and the public who aren't aware, my name is Paul Mitchell. I am the owner of a firm called Redistricting Partners. We've done over 100 redistrictings, including 5 of the 10 largest cities in California, the state of New York Independent Redistricting Commission, and a number of other agencies around the state and around the country. We've also worked for nonprofit groups like Common Cause and ACLU and other groups that are doing advocacy around redistricting. Myself and my staff were involved in the development of the Fair Maps Act and the Voters' Choice Act here in California. The Sacramento process we weren't actually involved in any official way, but we did watch it. And your process was an independent commission process, one that I hope other cities strive to utilize. I think it was a great process and something that we did in other agencies like Long Beach or in Oakland or Berkeley. And it's a preferred way of doing it. One of the big differences between this commission and the committee that was used in the past is that when this commission passes the lines, those lines are immediately effective. And that means that the county can start cutting up precincts. They can start helping people identify what district they're going to be in to file for office. People can start campaigning in those new districts. It's the same language that's used in the State Redistricting Commission. The State Redistricting Commission's lines are immediately effective, meaning that the legislature doesn't get to tinker with them and doesn't have to approve them. This commission got to pass the lines and bypass the City Council's approval before they got implemented. What that didn't mean is that it undid the voter choices that were made in either 2018 or 2020. When you elect somebody to office, whether it's City Council or State Senate, which was discussed as a perfect example, you're electing them for the full 4 years. And there's no administrative process that can undo that, like a redistricting. So, and this isn't just true for City Council or a State Senate, it's true for everything. And it always has been true, regardless of what the city policy has been in decades past. When the first Congress was elected, they were elected for terms, and those terms weren't, when they did a redistricting and gave more members of Congress to one state and fewer members of Congress to another, they didn't just tell these members of Congress they had to, get out of the chamber. They were able to fulfill their full terms until the next election. And the state law is really clear on this. It says that nothing about the redistricting under the Fair Maps Act should adjust any current member's district. And the AG has been very clear about it, recently putting out an opinion that said, and I'll quote this, "The redrawn boundaries should not be used for a given office until the first regular election for that office," meaning the new districts are in effect when you have people who are elected to them. This also is why you can't be drawn out of a district in redistricting in a literal sense. You can't have a situation where a district is redrawn and all of a sudden you can't be a council member because you don't live in it. The district isn't operative until someone's elected there. So the question that you're dealing with right now is what to do next. You now know, or we can accept that these districts that you were elected to are what you're serving, but you are going to have this issue that has been raised about accelerations and deferrals. I want to point out a few things about these. First off, an acceleration, meaning that somebody was going to go vote in the 2020 election. They just voted for somebody, or in 2022, they just voted for somebody in 2020. So they think, there's not going to be a city council candidate on my ballot, and voila, all of a sudden they're voting for a council member, but they already have a council member. So they've been accelerated. That happens not everywhere in the city. It only happens where a district goes from being an even number to an odd number. So in these little pockets around the map that were shown to you earlier. Now, there are 5 areas that this happened, where people went from District 2 to District 1 or 4 to 3, and that did impact residents all over the city. It will impact residents all over the city. It won't, by the way, impact them today or tomorrow. It will only impact them from December of 22 to December of 24. That's the intervening period of time where you're having these accelerations and deferrals. The deferrals are the opposite. These are happening where districts go from being odd to even. And in these instances, somebody elected somebody in 2018. They're marching off to their polling place in 2022. They expect to see a council election on their ballot, and there's no council election. So what do we do in those circumstances? So there are 6 pockets of the state where this is happening, and that map showed you earlier where that's happening. The 2 areas that are most impacted are District 3 and District 7. Where District 3 on the eastern side had 3 different pockets that are going to 2, 4, and 6. And where District 7 has a pocket that's going to District 8. We hear a lot about the District 3 pocket, but the District 7 pocket that's being deferred is 21,000 residents. So it's sizable. It's just not been as much a part of this discussion, and it should be. As was mentioned by your council, there's no path in state law that tells you what to do now. The state law is just kind of silent on it, and different agencies can undergo different policies in order to deal with it. The state Senate, as was mentioned, does have to deal with accelerations and deferrals. And And Mr. Mayor, you might remember, we actually found the press release when you found out that you were going to be representing an additional 267,305 residents for the purposes just of constituent services from 2013 to 2015 in that 6th Senate district.
I remember.
So that Elk Grove area, remember the current Dr. Pan district was very different post the 2012 redistricting. So from 2013 to 2015, you had this whole other area from West Sac to Elk Grove where you weren't their actual state senator. But if they had an issue, they would come to your office for constituent services. So the options that you have before you are doing maybe what the state Senate does, which is assigning to different council members who represents an area for the purposes of constituent services only, or identify the mayor or the city staff that will provide those constituent services. And we have done maps and can provide those maps to the city. Your city has also done maps of all these overlying areas and can work with your staff to make sure that they're all being properly identified. We're not on any contract with your city. We're just doing this pro bono. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. I know it's confusing, but when you think about it from the most important aspect of it, which is the voters' choices, that's always the most important aspect of all election law. And a voter made a choice to elect somebody in 2020 for 4 years, and all those voters have a right to that council member until that 4 years expires. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions or just be a part of it.
Thank you. No. I think you backed up what the city attorney expressed to us a few minutes ago. Is very, very helpful because you are a great authority on this. Thank you so much, Paul.
I think for me, the two questions that are still unanswered in this motion is resources for the folks who cover the areas and sort of the mayor's discretion, kind of as it's currently written, on who will help. And I think coming to the FAQ that Councilmember Bain just mentioned, I think those are going to be two important questions that folks are going to ask. Yeah. Is like, okay, what does that mean now in terms of what we can expect in terms of event sponsorships, timeliness of response, all of those things. So I don't know, Mayor, if you want to opine on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'd like to opine on that. I mean, these are questions we have to answer over the next couple of months. May or may not be appropriate for the charter, but definitely appropriate for guidance to our constituents. I will tell you, first of all, I think this was a great discussion. And, it's easy for me to say it this way as mayor, but I agree with everything that's been said in a way, because I think it's the amalgam of all these comments that I think will lead us to the right place. First of all, in my opinion, the most important thing we can do in a charter amendment, if we do nothing else, and I think we probably need to do more, but if nothing else, eliminate the immediate effective date of redistricting next decade. Because if it's effective at the beginning of the 2022 term, then, and the decision is made months earlier, then the next city council will have many months to sort of answer these questions without there being this immediate change all of a sudden, and no time to prepare. So that is one thing that I would urge in terms of the charter, in terms of the immediacy, the issue of immediacy, if that's legal. Here's why I agree with all of you. It's first of all, I think I like the idea of a constituent services office for a very different reason. I think it would actually break down some of the barriers that exist among and between districts and within the city. I like the fact that we would all be working together with sort of a common staff. Now, here's where I want to concur with Vice Mayor Ashby's point of view. It's not either or. You'd still maintain your ability to represent your constituents with your district staff in whatever way you want it, and use that constituent services office in whatever way you want it. Jay made a very important comment, and others reiterated it. This question of who should represent the thousands of residents in the deferred neighborhoods is about more than just day-to-day constituent services. It's also about pops in the park, to use that as the example. It's about the food truck days. It's about the community events where the council members and our staffs take real lead. And so I'm not I think it is appropriate legally, and more than legally, the mayor, and I want to depersonalize this because I ain't looking for additional work, and neither is my staff. But I do think the mayor, and there will be a different mayor, I guarantee you, the next time redistricting comes around, is elected by all the constituents. So she or he ought to be in sort of the primary position here to make sure that the people know that they can go to her or to him always as a fail-safe. But then how we set up the actual work to be accomplished on behalf of those, quote, deferred constituents is something that we can figure out together over the next couple of months. It's a combination of maybe a new constituent services office. It's a combination of additional staff for the mayor's office. I also agree with Councilmember Valenzuela that again, elections are elections, but the council member who will represent the deferred district, if he or she wins re-election, I think is in a prime position and frankly would have a real incentive to represent those deferred constituents really well, and at least to help with that representation. So I think it's the combination of all these things. The mayor ultimately responsible, because in this case it's a he, is the only one who actually legally represents those deferred constituents. The council member that will represent if she or he wins re-election, the mayor pro tem and the vice mayor, additional staff for the mayor, and add to that a constituent services office in a way that supplements the work that we do and maybe frees up our staff, the council staffs, to do a lot of other things as well. That could all be a good thing. And in the end, the more resources we put into providing direct services to our constituents, the better our city will be. So I agree with you all.